to the cloud. Yes. Now we can officially kick off. Welcome everybody in today's webinar on Diversity Day. And we're going to talk about diversity in all its aspects, and particularly the sense and nonsense of these type of days, and discuss whether or not these are still days that we need to have, whether we're on track with a great panel. And I would like to give the floor to our great panel to introduce themselves shortly to the audience. Eglantine, can you please start introducing yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Eglantine Delmas. I am working in the Worldline as head of risk, security and quality. Very happy to be here for this discussion and very interesting topic about diversity.
Thank you. Lana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lana Brandorne. I work at Mastercard Lighthouse program, where we partner fintech companies with Mastercard and banks. And I'm very happy to be here too.
Thank you. Erin?
Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Erin Thornton. I work for Swift, and at the moment I lead diversity and inclusion at Swift. Prior to that, I worked in the British government, and I've worked across IT forensics, computer security, data and analytics for most of my career. So I've been a woman in tech for a long time. That's one of the reasons why I do this work.
Great, thank you. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm actually a CEO of a fintech working in the central bank digital currency infrastructure space. I've been a man in tech for a very long time, so I'm here to kind of just listen, observe, and contribute where I can.
Great to have you, Paul. And last but not least, Martha.
Yeah, thanks, Esther, and thanks everybody for participating. I'm Martha, the founder of EWPN, and I'm here to listen more today than talk. So thanks for participating.
Thank you all. And my name is Esther Groen. I'm a colleague of Martha. I'm also in the board of EWPN. And I also work in Holland FinTech, which is the digital finance community. And I am your moderator for today. We are recording this session, and I would like to invite everybody. We have a small group. Ask your questions. You can use the chat, but you can also switch on your camera if you want to ask a question. Just see what you feel comfortable with, and I will pose them either for you or we'll give you the floor to ask the questions to our panel. But we have a nice plan for you and a nice discussion prepared. So Martha, I would like to kick off with you because it is Diversity Day. And we were just discussing it, that this particular day is not that common yet, but we have a lot of similar type of days or weeks to promote the importance of diversity. And as one of the co-founders of EWPN, I thought it might be nice for you to kick off the debate why you feel that this is still a very important topic to discuss, and whether the circumstances are actually maybe still the same or still valid for at the time when you created and founded EWPN.
Yeah, I think it's still relevant because, you know, we still have in a world where we live in a world where not everything is equal, but a lot of things have changed with progress, you know, at a very, very slow pace. There's a lot of initiatives that are focusing on the gender aspect of the diversity. But, you know, what people forget is diversity is more than just the gender. There's, you know, cultural, age, religion and whatnot. So I think those aspects of diversity also have to start getting a lot of attention because, you know, as you know, with some of our founders, some of our partners as well, we have a lot of organizations that we work with that are focusing on the gender aspect of diversity. So I think we do need to do more in terms of racial diversity, age diversity. Age diversity is also one of the things that we see is being missed out. So we do need to focus our attention as well on the other aspects of diversity, but there's been some progress. We still need to do more. When you look at the statistics of female founders, for example, in fintech getting access to funding, it's still very, very low. So there's a lot of things that needs to be done. So Diversity Day is still very relevant, but we've seen some progress.
Good, thank you. So, and you already kind of kicked off the scene already, because Lana, I wanted to start with you indeed on what do we mean or understand with diversity. We often talk about gender, but it's, as Martha said, way more. Can you explain your definition? Yes.
Yeah, so when I think of diversity, I think of the practice of including a range of human differences. And Martha, you already outlined many of those different qualities that people can bring to the table. And I think at the end of the day, we want the diversity in thought when we think of innovation and in terms of building up a company, building up teams. We want to have different opinions, different ways of seeing things and different aspects. And that comes from having those different backgrounds and different experiences in life. Could be something related to the way you are or your belief system, your value systems, political views. So I think that the diversity is much more than just gender at the end of the day.
Yeah. And Eglantine, we talked about it a little bit last week, that how we agree that there's a lot of, there are way more aspects to diversity than just gender. But do you feel that we're making the right progress in gender, or is it still one of the biggest problems that we need to fix?
Yeah, it is a very good question. I think that we all agree that diversity should be, wider than gender. And I think this is more from a philosophical point of view, this is very clear. But also what we see is that on the first topics that we have started to address a few years back already on gender, we are not here where we would expect we would have been, when we started to work on that. So we have had exactly the same debate in Worldline when we established our Unite network, which is our diversity and inclusion network. We started thinking about diversity and gender, and we said, no, we need to widen it and to have really an understanding what is diversity, what we put in it, and obviously accompany that with inclusion, because although everything is linked to diversity and inclusion, so that how do we include this diversity in everything we do? But at the same time, we recognize that if we do, we cannot fight all the battles at the same time. And we need also to find the priorities, and not to say that this one is more important than the others. Obviously, all are important, but in an organization or in an action, we also need to focus for results. And I would say that if we do not make important steps into gender now or in the following years, it will be more and more difficult to look at wider aspects of diversity, because we need to make great progress on gender. And again, it's not first, but we need to have results in the first battle that we have started a few years back.
Yeah.
This would be my view.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's interesting. And sometimes it's even said that when you solve the gender, the gender disbalance, basically, you're bringing more diversity with women. And that's when I visit women networks, you see way more diversity when I in the financial industry than when I visit, for instance, male-dominant events. What is your view, Erin and Paul, on this? Erin, I see you nodding.
So I'm nodding in some ways. It really comes in, and hits home for me. We're not where we want to be. There's been good progress, but we're not where we want to be on gender. There are more men named John leading UK FTSE 500 companies, for instance. That's a stat that is widely shared, but it's true. And this is not just a UK, if we take that picture anywhere, we will find that. But it's not just about women. And I'm not sure I totally agree with things everyone has said, because I actually think that when you are looking at the intersectionality aspects, some of the things we're doing may be helping a section of women. It may be not helping other women of colour, other women, other demographics, women with different sorts of caring responsibilities, older women. So I think we need to look at this. It's hard, right? It is hard to look at it in its plurality, but I think we need to move everyone forward. For me.
Very good point. Paul?
I think personally, the fact that we live in an age where everyone's walking around with a tiny computer in their pockets, we've actually gone to space, the moon, we've put robots on Mars, but we still have to have the discussion on diversity in any form. It's embarrassing as human beings, to be quite honest. So I think we can do a hell of a lot better than we've done so far. This should not be a topic to discuss. It should be resolved. It should no longer be a thing. We're bright enough as human beings. We're intelligent enough as a species. We should be able to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is a very interesting, but which is a great point to have to move basically what the role of the industry can be, because apparently we're not able to fix it. So we can indeed shoot men to the moon and go to Mars and all kinds of great things. And even, because that was interesting, I don't know if you heard it, but next week, the actor from Star Trek is going to go.
William Shatner.
Yes, he's going to go into space.
For real.
Yeah, for real this time. So he's going to beam himself up, but now literally. But so it's interesting. Apparently, as an industry, we're still struggling to fix it. And Erin, I thought it might be an interesting question to open with you, because you are the diversity and inclusion lead at Swift. It still should be top of mind. It should be an active topic within organizations. And can you tell us a little bit what Swift currently is doing in this area?
Yeah, so I think it's also worth starting that, this is not a bolt-on. So for me and for many people working on this call, working in this, in our industry, we know now from data, McKinsey studies, lots of data there, really shows us that this is obviously there's a social justice imperative here, but there's also a business outcome. We know that companies that are in the top quartile for diversity are delivering innovative products to their customers. That's what we're all about. We're all about improving things for our customers at Swift. And we need to have that diversity in order to get those products out there successfully and to make sure that they're well suited to the global market in which we operate. So that's why it matters. What are we doing? So first of all, we haven't got this cracked. So let's start with that. But we are making good progress, I think. We approach this as a whole and a holistic way. We can't solve this ourselves. We absolutely need to be walking the walk internally on diversity and inclusion, whether that's recruitment, where we go to look for talent, how we develop our talent, and making sure that when we make talent decisions internally, we have all the statistics in front of us to challenge ourselves, to make sure that those unconscious biases that we all have are not inadvertently making their way into the decisions around who we promote and how we develop people. So that's the first thing. But we also need to look at ourselves in the ecosystem. So we need to play our part with partners. So whether that's in schools, talking to them, putting a wide range of diverse role models into groups of students in front of them so that they can see themselves in companies like ours, because that's really important, because we know that for instance, girls turn off tech careers by the time they leave primary school. So that's maternelle in France. And the other thing is we need to play our part in our industry as ambassadors. So that's things like making sure we have good representation on panels, diverse panels across those aspects of diversity, not just women, but women are important, but also things like our Cyber Star scholarship scheme, where we're taking a group of high potential women from a number of our customers through a program of development at Cybos to try and give them that step up that they need to get to leadership. So that's kind of what we're doing in a nutshell, and why it matters to us.
Yeah. And Eglantine, Worldline, of course, Worldline Global is one of the big players in the industry as well. Do you feel that organizations should be very vocal about the importance of diversity, or has it been a little bit stigmatized over the years, talking about diversity? What is your...
Yeah, I think it's not an easy topic, because as far as you want to be very vocal and you believe it is very important for your company, whenever you go vocal, I mean, we have seen quite a lot of companies, I mean, having I would say, feedbacks that are not really positive in the industry. Nevertheless, what we believe is that we need to be vocal. We need to be vocal on what we do, because we definitely believe it is important for our company and for the industry as a whole. That, as Erin mentioned, it doesn't start at our side. It starts in the universities. It starts even at the school, where we see that, I mean, little girls are not choosing scientific studies. And when I look around myself, my girl and the friends of my girl, they're all choosing psychology, or they're choosing marketing, and I'm pushing them to go to tech, and they don't go, also because they see that in the industry, it's all men. And that's also why we need to change that, because we, as you said, we need to be role models, ambassadors in change from within. We have in Worldline in great ambition. We are not where we should be, but obviously we have different steps, as you were mentioning previously. I think there is ignorance, awareness, and action. And as you were saying, we are more in the awareness part. So we know where we are. We have defined quite ambitious targets in terms of where we would like to be in 5 years from now, obviously, and we'll probably come back to that, helped also by the quotas and the different regulation that are pushing all the sector to evolve. But obviously we are using that for the impulse and to really change from within. We cannot do that by ourselves, only by the diversity, I would say, community, or the ones that are really into it. We need men to support us. We need really men ambassadors, and change in the work environment and in the way we work so that it's really adapted to all kind of profiles. So we are definitely into action. We want things to change. We need to make sure it's starting from schools, recruitment, talent recognition, to talent retainment, and also making sure that all types of diversity and inclusion aspects are taken into account. I also think that when we are starting to work on that on one side of diversity, it has impacts on the rest, because when you start working on unconscious bias, when you start understanding what are your own, I would say, barriers to include more people, and we all have a bias, so I mean, men and women, then it's helpful for the whole organization. And so what we do concretely in Worldline is that we have trainings on unconscious bias that we are going to start, that we have a campaign this year on that. We have also, I mean, strong involvement from the HR teams on recruitments, making sure we have candidates 50-50 and diverse panel of candidates when we are recruiting. We make sure that we also have a special attention when we are promoting people, in making sure we have also promoting with the right attention to diversity. And obviously from the top management, we also try to make change happen from the top. So making sure that in the mancos of the business lines, we also reflect that diversity, as Erin was mentioning, for innovation, for the good of the business, because it needs to represent also who are our customers, which are definitely diverse.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Great answer, and very good to understand what big organizations like Swift and Worldline are doing. Paul, going back to you as the fintech entrepreneur here, and you have, as you told us, not in this call, but you're probably going to tell, you have a very diverse personal background. I know you have a very open view on diversity, as you already mentioned in the beginning. How do you deal with diversity in your scaling business? Is it
honestly a topic? It's not a topic in the same sense in which it is for most other companies, simply because we have a culture within the company where this is not a challenge, or the topics that lead to the diversity conversation are not things that we see as part of our thinking or the way we actually do things within the company. We don't hire people based on their gender, their ethnicity, their age, their, whatever the case would be. We also don't discriminate based on those things. We're hiring within the company based on a specific skill set. It doesn't matter if you're coming into the interview in a wheelchair and you're from another planet. I don't care, as long as you're legally within the country and you have the specific skill set and knowledge and you can bring something to the table. That's what we're interested in. And that's how it works within our company. And I think that's how it should always work within most companies. But then, as you've mentioned, my background has had a great deal of influence in the creation and shaping of that culture in the first place, because I grew up, so I've grown up in multiple parts of the world. I grew up as a biracial man in multiple cultures, where in one country, in one culture, I'm seen as one thing, in another I'm perceived as something else, and the third I'm perceived as yet another thing. What this taught me from very early in life, and what I was also raised to understand, with my own family and so forth, is that the perception of others is more of a reflection on them than it is a reflection on me. It doesn't change the reality, it doesn't change the fact. So I forged forward with my own path, seeing the world through my eyes and sharing that vision with others, or calling people out on what I think is nonsense when I've seen it. But beyond that, I can't go into anyone's mind and say, you should do things this way, you should do things that way. But what I can say is I've observed that from my perspective, I think the diversity challenge starts, as you said, Eglantine, very early in life. It starts at the school level, it starts at home. But it goes, I think if you look at it goes a bit deeper than that, because it's a combination of the complexity of the human group psychology. So you're looking at what adults are impressing on the younger generation. Yeah. So if you see a young girl who's age 5, who's interested in science, she wants to be an astronaut, she wants to be a rocket scientist, or she wants to be whatever the case may be. And then by the time she's 15, she decides, okay, I'm going to do psychology because that's what's acceptable. Her friends may be a part of that pressure that lead to the way she's thinking, because she wants to fit in. But then you have to consider, where's this culture or this synthetic culture that's led to that way of thinking and that polarization of gender? Or where's this culture that's led to polarization based on ethnicity, or polarization based on religion, expectations of someone based on their appearance or their gender? Where is that coming from? And if you dig a little deeper, I think for the most part, at the end of the 20th century into the 21st century, most first world countries, this culture is coming from politics. It's divisive politics that's used to win votes with no care for what comes after the politicians in office, or what happens after they're no longer in office. And they divide an entire country, and it trickles down to the next generation for far more years than the number of years they'll be in office. And that's actually something we have to consider. It's actually the group psychology effect on the younger generations and the reshaping of society. That's the problem we need to really dig deeper into. And I think if we were to examine it, we'll probably find that that's actually the root of most of these problems.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about the role of the government in the next session. But I think also what I hear you saying, and actually all three of you, is that role models are really important, because I completely agree with you, say that there's peer pressure, especially when you're young. You want to fit in, you don't want to be the outcast or different. But you could argue that difference needs to be rewarded to in whatever shape or form, or that we have great leading examples, role models, who show that being different is good. But I also wanted to tap into the fact, Lana, that you're also in the startup fintech scene quite active. And especially in relation to the battle for talent, which I think is really relevant in the industry, having a more diverse approach, having a more holistic and wider set of requirements on who to acquire in your business or recruit in your business is, I think, really important. Do you see that the fintechs are embracing, because I think Paul has a very strong point, but this is also how you've been brought up. But do you see
exactly? I think it really comes down from who the founders and the leadership team is, right? And in Paul's case, it comes as second nature for him to have a diverse team. Then consider many of the startups, and if you think this typical image of young guys out of college starting a company, it's completely natural for us to look for similar talent, what has performed before. So let's say my co-founder is great at sales, and I'm looking for a salesperson. I'm going to look for someone like him or her, because those qualities have worked, and now I want to just double down on those skills and those type of competencies, and then very likely to look for someone that looks, acts, and talks the same way, because I think that works. And I think in an initial phase of starting a company, you do want to have a lot of trust in your team, and you are very small, so you work very tightly together. If you're too different in how you approach things, like, it might slow you down at the very beginning. But as you start hiring people and as you start growing, you do need to consider that diversity as one of the aspects. And we can see that now also from the investor point of view, where they are requiring for the teams to be more diverse. When we select companies for the Mastercard program, we also look at the diversity aspect of each team and prefer the companies with the diverse teams. But then it also comes once you are at that hiring stage. We talked the other day, right, when we had the thing, and Paul said it's crucial to do the team building and alignment. As you are bringing more diversity, more diverse thoughts, you need to build that trust among people that necessarily wouldn't interact on a day-to-day basis, or like call themselves friends. So from a founder leader point of view, you constantly need to think about it and build your team to build the trust.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine that it's a whole different ball game, for instance, with big organizations like Swift and Worldline, to change the dynamics, create the inclusive environment and bring in the diversity as to a starting or a scaling business. If that's your starting point, then in essence, you could start to build that relationship. But and I'm curious to what your point is, what your view on this is, Martha, because we still see quite disappointing numbers on, for instance, seed capital or venture capital that's going into female founders in the tech industry. I think it's barely a couple of percent that's going to female founding organizations. So the majority is still going to male founding founders. Apparently, as an industry, it's really difficult to break these patterns. What do you think we need to do to change that perception on female leaders or female founders?
I think a lot of points have been raised. Of course, it starts with the founder, right? And it's all about intention. It's if you are intentional in building an inclusive society or company, you will go to the limits to do what it is that is required to be done for you to have the inclusive. So it all starts with the intention of the leadership, of the managers of the company, for them to trickle down to the people who are on the ground recruiting. But we've seen a lot of changes when it comes to, for example, let's focus on funding going to female founders. We're seeing a lot of non-traditional ways of funding female founders, so like groups. An example is C.E.O. C.E.O is a community of what we call activators, a group of women coming together. I'm part of that group as well. And we pool money and then we fund female-founded companies, right? So we're seeing a lot of disruption of from the old traditional ways of working, because more women are starting to speak up, minorities are starting to speak up, underrepresented communities are starting to create solutions for their problems based on their pain points, right? So companies have no choice than to adopt, because consumers are becoming more educated and they have more power to speak up, to start solutions that will solve their problems. So big organizations will have no choice than to really become inclusive, not just diverse, inclusive, and actually allow people to participate in decision-making, in product design, and everything, because otherwise they will be phased out by these disruptive communities and solutions that are coming up. We're seeing coming up in the industry. So I think we are seeing progress. It's a little bit polarized, but we're seeing progress in a ways, and we will continue seeing this disruption going on and finding alternative solutions to solve this problem. But everything starts with intention. If there's no intention to be inclusive, nothing will happen.
No, agree. And I think indeed it's good to see that you do see that these gaps are going to be filled in by different mechanisms, different platforms, new platforms that are focusing on this particular user group. And maybe it's good to, so we do see progress, but it's very slow. So as an industry, it is really difficult to change. So I think it's important to talk about the role of the government. So Eglantine, I want to start with you. Based on what we've discussed so far, apparently we still need the government to maybe force or break patterns. And for instance, in the Netherlands, we've just launched or accepted a law on quota for managing and supervisory boards. And it was loudly celebrated. And it was interesting because I didn't feel that I wanted to celebrate, because I thought it was actually quite disappointing that we have to have law in place to push the industry for something that's basically also from a business point of view, as you mentioned, Erin, such a clear case. There is such a clear business case. Why don't we change that? So I think interesting for you, Eglantine, because you're top level within Worldline. What role should the government play in your view?
So let's be clear. I mean, we would all prefer that it would go, I mean, without the law enforcing laws so that it changes, because we all consider this should all only be, I mean, it's common sense, and it's, I would say, just equality between everyone. So we would all prefer that this doesn't go that way. Nevertheless, what we have seen with all the laws, I mean, it has started in Norway, then in Belgium, in Italy, in France, and as you say, now in Germany and in Netherlands. And when you look at the graphs, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, it was quite flattish in the years before the law was passed, and then when the law passed, I mean, it has ramped up quite significantly. So we can all say we don't like quotas. I would prefer that we are not seen as you are there because you are a quota person, obviously, because this is obviously the what we hear after that, but it is definitely a change maker. So I believe that when things are not changing fast, and it is, I would say, a bit normal, because it's an important status quo, and it's an important element of our society. So even though we all believe that it should change, I mean, it's definitely, we need to make some I mean, it's changing the way people are promoting, it's changing the way, the positioning of men in the big organizations, especially. So it doesn't happen just by chance or just because it's the right thing to do. So things like laws, like quotas, again, we don't like them, but they are useful and they really make things change. And when they are there, when we will be at a level where we are at nearly parity, or then I believe then things will re-equilibrate themselves, because then we will be able to really talk on inclusion and make sure that this is not only a quota thing, but it is definitely a normal thing to do. And I also believe that it is a way to tackle one of the issues that we face more and more, which is when we have those laws coming up, we have a lot of voices up saying, but there's no women to fulfill those positions. Where are they? And I mean, it's very easy. When you put quotas, you just find them. And they are not just found because we need women. They are found because they are talented women that are just there waiting to have their role in those organizations. So again, my view is that I would prefer not to have them, but they are definitely helping, and this will help us change. And this is, from my point of view, I mean, the role of governments is to push when the society is not ready up for change.
Yeah, thank you, Eglantine, because I can agree with you a lot. But Paul, I know that you have a different view on this, so I would definitely want to give you the floor. Because I think also, based on some of your experiences in the US, the role of the government, as you already earlier pointed out, of politicians maybe in particular, can also maybe have a reverse effect on what you would like to achieve. What's your view on this?
Well, just to correct, so I'm making a reference to something within the United States, but I've not lived in the United States myself. But in the United States, the government of the US introduced something called affirmative action in the 1960s, which was meant to, like accelerate the diversity within the workplace, the diversity within the hiring processes and so forth, and to make, it had good intentions on the surface. What it effectively did instead is created this hostile environment over 2 to 3 decades of people who looked at anyone who was different or anyone who was a part of this program who was hired for the job based on being a minority or whatever the case may be, as the token hire, as being worth less. So effectively, it's the same thing Eglantine said. It's like you don't want a situation where gender quotas lead to women feeling like, okay, well, they're being treated as someone who's only being accepted because the law says they have to be. They don't actually deserve to be there because no one sees them as being qualified to do the job. This is the same problem. This has happened before, and it's basically history repeating itself. I think the role of government when it comes to policies in this regard should be to protect, not to actively interfere with the process. And I think the solution here is not one of enforcing quotas. The solution has to be one of changing the way society perceives these differences, so that society understands from the very beginning that there is no difference other than biology. It has no impact on the ability to do the job. It has no impact on the ability to create, to provide positive or useful input to any process within the company. And in fact, if we're going to have a company that's producing things that will impact society in any form, shape, or other, and human beings are part of that company, then the human beings should, as a cross-section, represent the society that they're actually impacting. And that should just be common sense. It should not require government interference. It should not require regulation. If anything, my opinion is that given that politicians so often use division in their politics or divisive politics to win votes, and that has actually contributed to a lot of the problems we're having today when it comes to diversity issues in most countries, I think if anything, regulations should be put in place that make it illegal for politicians to use divisive politics. That would be helpful. So that's my opinion on the topic.
That's definitely, I think, a whole different panel discussion. But yeah, I can understand that. It's actually going back to educating, making people aware of that there are indeed no differences. So you take away the polarization part. And then maybe, Erin, a question to you, because you could argue, and I think, Eglantine, you also addressed it, that being in a diverse or an inclusive environment, whether that's your social, personal environment or your professional environment, actually is a human right. So that might also be something that you could require the government to start working on, that it's our right to be treated in an equal way. We have it in all our laws, but apparently we don't execute it in the right way. What's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when you're talking about ethical issues and rights issues, you know, one of the things, and I studied philosophy, so I'm not going to get too deep into this because, believe me, I can do that. But I think one of the things that's really important is to apply the golden rule, which is, you know, if I were in someone else's position, how would I want to be treated? And that allows you to, as far as you can, step into anybody else's shoes and say, actually, we all want to be treated in a completely fair and equitable way. And it's quite clear, you know, it's actually quite, things are not equal still. There's a lot of goodwill. People don't know how to make them equal. There are still quite a lot of structures that are invisibly disadvantaging particular types of people. And those are the reason behind which, you know, when the men on the board, for instance, are looking around for the female talent, they're not seeing it. Now, that's not because it's there. It's not there. It is there. It's there in bags, as we all know. But for whatever reason, these people have not been brought through their organizations in the way that we would like them to be, in a fair and equal way. And that's still not happening. And it's not happening across gender, ethnicity, disability, LGBTQ, you know, there are age issues. So this is very wide. So that's all I want to say just really about that. But I think what I would also say is I've heard this has been a very sophisticated discussion. I'm sure that people can see the different perspectives here. I think what I would say is that I started my career completely not wanting quotas, not saying why it was necessary. We're past this. Why do we even need to talk about this? You know, this is something that used to happen back in the day. That's not the case. I've gone through my career and things are not moving. And so I'm afraid that I've got to a position where I'm actually saying, actually, we do need these quotas. We probably only need them for a short time, but we need them because, as Eglantine was saying, when you have a more diverse board, a more diverse management structure, what you find is that the way of working and the whole organization changes, and what is valued changes, and it becomes a better organization for everybody. And I've seen that happen in places where there have been quotas. So I have moved my point on my position on this. And, you know, my great aunt worked on women's rights, on gender equality. My mother worked on gender equality. I'm working on gender equality, and I don't want my daughter to be still having these conversations. Yeah. I don't want her facing all these obstacles. I don't want anyone else's son or daughter facing the obstacles about fairness, about how they get to the top. Yeah, I'm done. We need to be past this, and we're not. So that's why I think those are important.
I actually think you've made some very solid points, Erin, but I want to challenge the view that on quotas. Is it the quotas, or is it the result of the quotas being just the method that took us there? The fact that the organization is better because everyone has grown up a bit, everyone's become more mature, everyone's become more open-minded, they've understood and learned more things. I think if organizations look at their diversity challenge or diversity requirements as more of a, we need to grow up, we need to learn more, we need to understand other cultures. We now have a person in our team from Maori. We have a person who from Maori culture. We have a man in our team from who's of Chinese origin. We have a man or a woman in our team who is who's originally from Zimbabwe. We have a man in our team or someone who's out from the LGBTQ community from Brazil. In the process of having these people on the team who are there because they're qualified to do the job, not because of their backgrounds or origins, but in the process of having these people on the team and everyone is treated as equal and given the opportunities to have input and say in the future of the company, what ends up happening is the company is able to produce something better, but by having these very diverse backgrounds and origin stories and then histories and so forth behind each person who's not from that culture is now or should be walking away with 3 new things from this example I've given that they did not know before. They should have 3 new perspectives that they did not have before. The result should be our differences have actually made us each better and stronger and more than we were when we started the conversation. And that maturity is actually what changes the company. That maturity is what makes the company a better environment. It makes it a healthier environment. So if you think about it, it's exactly the same situation where you have the, as it's called quite often, the old boys network, where it could be the frat house network. It's the same thing, a very toxic environment, for everyone. People think about it as, oh, this is a toxic environment for women because it's very much a frat house environment where all these guys are behaving like they're still having frat parties all day long. It's not just a toxic environment for women. It's a toxic environment for those guys who are actually doing it. And they don't realize it because what they're doing is they're stifling their ability to grow. And the same thing occurs when you have an environment where it's very polarized. There's only one ethnicity or one culture or one religion represented in that environment. It's toxic for anyone else, not because it's bad for the people who are coming in. It's also toxic for the people who are sitting in that environment because, again, they can't grow. As a species, if we can't mature, what's the point?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's, of course, all about the outcome. And I think we all agree that this is how it should work. But I think we still have to conclude that it doesn't work for a lot of organizations, not yet. But Lana, because I agree with Erin, I also started out with, I don't need a quota, I'll get there on my own. And as I grew older and more, had learned more and became more experienced, I also switched my standpoint. And you're a young leader here, so I'm also very curious to understand your point of view on types of law and mechanisms, and whether or not you feel they will help you progress quicker, better in your ambitions.
Yeah, when Erin started off saying, when she started off her career, she hated quotas, and I started my career 6 years ago, and same thing, like no one wants to be a quota, and you're confident, your power, you want to go for what you think you deserve and can do, prove yourself and learn in the process and grow. And to be fair, right now, for me, I felt that in a way, I've sometimes even gotten advantages of being a female leader personally. But at the same time, I do see this happen in the industry as such, because like in fintech industry, we have less than 7% here in Sweden, female leaders, and 7%, that's like even way below the average tech numbers. So while I personally haven't experienced yet that sort of wall, I do believe that sometimes things need more force in order to change, and also more education and understanding where does our biases stand, and having these conversations are valuable for everyone involved, and that's why everyone needs to be part of these discussions as well. And we talked about this earlier, like I don't believe in sort of excluding any gender, particularly from some of the activities, and we do that. A lot of women in tech events are female only, and I would want to see more inclusion towards everyone, and having that open discussion, having that understanding of where does our biases lie, and how we can improve, learn, and grow.
Yeah, and that might then be, I think, also the point that Paul was making, a role that the government should start to play better. But also, I think key leaders in the industry can take their part. maybe if this is a good time to ask the audience if they have any questions or like to participate in this conversation. You can switch on your camera because we're such an intimate group. So feel free, don't be scared. We're very diverse and very inclusive, so you can ask any question you would like to ask. Who dares to open up his or her camera? Nobody yet? Okay, but feel free. Maybe then a question to you all. So trying to recap this a little bit. Do we still need days like these? Do they still make sense? Who wants to kick off?
I think
yes.
We do need days like these to remind us that we're not there yet. And I think once we've gotten there, that's a sign that we've actually crossed the threshold and become a more mature society as a whole. Once we can get there, we no longer need them. But the fact that we need them every single year that goes by, that we still need days like these, is one more year of shame. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But if you think of young leaders joining the force as well, of course, we talked about like a lot of things come top down, and you need to set standards in the organization. But I think we all start at some point, and we all come through this maturing phase, and young leaders will always need this discussion. That's what I
hope not. I hope we get to the point where society is a bit more mature and it's no longer a thing that we have to do. It's just common sense. It's obvious. I hope that we are at the stage where, for all of our differences, we live in a society where each person looks at their neighbor and they can say, okay, well, two doors down, this guy's parents are originally, or he originally is from Sri Lanka, and culturally they're known for such and such and such, and he's proud of this and this and this, and he shared this with me. And across the street, that person's parents are from Norway, and this is such and such and such, and this is what I've learned, and everyone gets along. And we can all make, in fact, when we can get to the stage where we can make jokes that are today considered inappropriate, and they're seen exactly as that, because everyone's on the same level playing field, I think then we've achieved something in society. That's where we need to go.
Yeah, that's the relaxing side then. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. Nevertheless, I would think that why I believe we still need those days is because although this is the target, we have still room to work to get there. And I think those days are remembering us that even ourselves, we need to work on ourselves to make sure that we are always having this in mind. I mean, when we are recruiting, if I take my case, I would always recruit women that is around my age. That is, this would be, I would say, the normal path. We are recruiting people that are like us. And if we are not fighting those bias that we have unconscious, and that we are opening up, and as you say, we should go for diverse profiles, different, but this means that we also need to accept that we are going to be challenged, that they are going to have different opinions, and this is also a way of working and a way and an attitude that I all believe leaders would go to, because we should understand that this is the target and this is what will make us successful. But I think we need to work on it. And that's why I would believe that these days are important, to make sure that we don't forget that we need to work on ourselves as well.
I think that's a really important point. So when I have been constructing my own teams, I would consider a monoculture to be a failure, and it would leave me with blind spots that I can't see. So if you forgive the expression. So, it's really about looking for those different bits of the puzzle that you need to build that really strong team, to make sure that you're not missing anything. So I think that's a really important point. I think in terms of diversity days, it's absolutely not the only thing you should be doing. Obviously, this is like we said, there are all these activities that you need internally in your structures and processes around your recruitment, making sure your hiring managers are really examining their own bias, aware of it, and using very structured recruitment techniques to make sure that they're as fair as they possibly can be, and making sure that you present yourself as a good place to work for people who come from diverse backgrounds as well, so that people are walking in your recruitment door even to start with, because we know that's a barrier. And diversity days and communication around them can help that. But also it's a time to give the community a voice and to celebrate. You know, Swift is a global company. Many people on this call are part of global companies. It's impossible to know everything. You know, that's one of the delights of working in a multinational organization, is that you're constantly learning. And diversity days are giving you that space in your diary and a little reminder. Sit back, listen to someone else. Where have they been? What can they bring? You know, what do they need from you to be at their best in the workplace? So for me, they do still have a place. And I hope that we won't get rid of them, because I really enjoy them.
Yeah, I think, yes, we do need them, but how and why? Because we're seeing a lot of PR going around these days and events. There's a lot of talk, empty promises, lip services. So we do need diversity days with accountability, so that when companies commit to whatever it is that they're committing to, they are held accountable. And in the following year, they can actually say, this is what we've done, this is what we promised, and this is what we've delivered. This is where we're still falling short of. Because what we see now is a lot of diversity days within the companies, but there's no progress whatsoever, or no changes are being made internally. So we do need diversity with accountability, I think, in my opinion.
I agree. Rosalyn, do you want to ask a question? Because you switched on your camera.
Yeah, I did. And I have to apologize. I missed a big chunk at the beginning. I'm just here with my newborn baby. So if you hear cries, then that's him. No and just on the subject of diversity days, I think they are necessary at the moment, but I would like to see the purpose change as we go on. And I would like it to become something of a refresher moment. So maybe picking up on the latest trends, or also looking at the statistics that have been gathered along the way. So coming back to what the lady just said then, you know, about the measurements, but also what successes has the company achieved in the past year or since the last diversity day because of the diverse workforce that have been brought in. So it could be recruitment statistics, or it could be an invention or something innovative, or a session, a learning like course that's been put on, and just to celebrate diversity as well. So, you know, you could make it an informal moment where you have dishes from different countries, or you have costumes from different countries, or you celebrate people of different ages. You know, not only kind of ethnicity or gender, but there's so many other things that we could focus on as well. So I think diversity days could move towards the celebration in future, and away from the education that we really have to focus on right now.
Yeah, nicely put, Rosalyn. Thanks.
Thanks.
There's a question from the audience, and I know we talked about it shortly in our prep call, is whether there can be a downside to being too diverse. Is there a reverse effect on being too diverse? I know, Eglantine, we talked about it a little bit in relation to Ingenico, who invested a lot of action, so really moved from awareness to action and created a very diverse organization, but where people lost a little bit of sense of belonging. So maybe this is a good question for you, Eglantine.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, we need to be mindful on it's more on the number of actions that are launched and the importance that is put on that from the organization. I don't believe we can be too much diverse. I think that we can never be too much diverse. Nevertheless, we need to be mindful that this is somehow the company's culture and the company's values is something that we need to all to be living for, at least adhering to, and this diversity issue needs to fit into that as well. So we need to see how the diversity and inclusion is fitting with the company culture and how they are nurturing one another, obviously. So I don't think we were too much into diversity, but I think that we had very diverse companies that for which, I mean, putting that into one company and respecting at the same time, or keeping the sense of belonging to the previous entities we had acquired was a challenge. But I think we have managed that quite well in making sure we could keep the diversity in the different entities, but at the same time create this sense of belonging to one company with common values and common purpose.
Yeah, thank you. Very nicely put. And Paul, I like your comments as well. And maybe you can say it yourself.
So what I was just alluding to the fact that I don't think that there is such a thing as a melting pot culture that leads to the loss of culture. I think if you think about melting pot cultures, they're themselves a new culture. And if you think of all the cultures that people are so concerned about losing today, they all began as melting pot cultures at some point in history. So it is itself a good thing. It's the evolution.
I think that's just a great closing comment. Because we're almost, it's 4 o'clock, so we need to close it down. Yeah, there are no other questions. So I would like to thank you all for having this great discussion. And I think we tackled quite a lot of different perspectives. So in that sense, I think we did well on Diversity Day. And I think the main conclusion is that we still need them. And that hopefully they will migrate to a celebration day instead of an awareness day. So also I'd like to thank the audience for dialing in, and we will send the recordings to everybody and share it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For this.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Even kijken.